best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
All right. And with us now is Andy Ofiesh. He is senior software developer at Bitcoin Armory. And really, Bitcoin Armory is cutting edge when it comes to securing Bitcoin and developing applications and wallets. Andy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Kerry. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, so Trace is telling me about Bitcoin Armory when we had our last event in Vegas. Yeah, it looks like the future to me. Bitcoin certainly is, and Armory is in the spirit of Bitcoin, where you become your own banker. Yeah, and hey, I was just, I don't know if you follow Jeff Berwick at all, but he just did a piece today where he says he's thinking the collapse is coming September of 2015. And one of the things he says you need to have besides bullion is Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Bullets, Bitcoin, and being, he said, which is a whole nother thing. And, it's really, really interesting. So Trace tried to get me into Bitcoin 3 years ago, unfortunately, or 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I was a bit thick-headed, unfortunately, to my demise. Well, let me step back to what you're saying with the collapse is coming. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of vague. Who's collapsing where? The demise of the dollar, whatever form it's going to take. Well, people have been predicting this a lot, along with the end of the world and other things. And we actually have something to compare the dollar to, which is a bunch of other currencies in the world. Mm-hmm. And compare the dollar to those, it's a bit further from collapsing than some other less stable currencies. We could take a look at those. Yeah. If they're collapsing and see how Bitcoin's doing in those countries, say like Argentina. Yeah. And so maybe those can be the canary in the gold mine. And we can take a look and say, well, dollar will probably collapse after some of these other currencies, Dollar will probably be the last. Yeah. The last. Because look, you got the yen, you got the euro, you got, and you got all these lesser currencies. And to me, like, I just see when you start hearing countries talking about adopting cryptocurrencies, you just know, you can just see what's going to happen, Right. Because it's not because they want to adopt them. It's because they have no choice. Yeah. Because if a country says, all right, the world has lost faith in our ability to manage our own currency, and they know we're liars and that we're just going to inflate, but we can create a cryptocurrency and we can show the world open source that we will create no more than X amount of currency units. Then that's a game changer, Well, that's one of the aspects of Bitcoin that's great is that it's provable that there will only be a certain number of Bitcoin. I mean, that's because it's a program, it's a protocol, and it's all programmed into it. But that's not the most exciting thing to me about Bitcoin, which I see as programmable money. Yeah. So, you can program a finite amount of it to ever exist into the protocol, but it does other things that are pretty amazing. So when we talk about the dollar collapsing, I don't know if that's really the important issue. To me, what's important about Bitcoin, among other things, is it's a money teleporter. Yeah. So, don't get me wrong. I'm looking at it from the economist standpoint, not the entrepreneur's standpoint, which I am a serial entrepreneur. I see the other side of this, the ability to cut out the bankster middleman from every transaction. What really opened me up to this, and said, I got to start doing a podcast about it and a newsletter and really get into it, was this guy who's working in China from Hong Kong, and he gets paid in yuan, but he doesn't trust the Chinese banks. and the Chinese government and believes they're headed for a crash. So what he does every week, rather than waiting online to get a permit to convert his yuan into HK dollars, is he right away puts it in a Chinese bank, converts to Bitcoin, and then converts to HK dollars for virtually free.
Right.
That, when I saw that, I said, oh, wait a second. Okay, this is where it's at. Now I get it.
Yeah.
I totally understand it.
All over the world. I've talked to folks who are diehard Bitcoiners, and they say they don't keep any other currency around. And when they travel, they log in or take a look at local Bitcoins and see who they can trade with wherever they are in the world. Mm-hmm. And so they're not even dealing with exchanges.
Exactly.
And so they're dealing with people that will, give them enough spending money to walk around another country.
Yeah. And then here's an article from the Financial Times: Bitcoin unlikely to enjoy widespread use. Don't you love it? Yeah. Where are they?
Well, I think that this analogy I have about Bitcoin, it's like when you throw a big party and people are excited about it and they show up early. Mm-hmm. And then they complain that the hors d'oeuvres aren't out yet.
Yeah.
You're not. Bitcoin, the party is just getting ready. Everyone that's using Bitcoin now showed up to the party early.
Uh-huh.
So make yourself useful.
Yeah.
Add some infrastructure, add some open source code to it. Help make this party amazing. And in a few years, the party's really going to get started, because we're going to have a lot of functionality built on top of this amazing protocol.
Yeah. And then here's another article: currencies in The Guardian. Currencies, Bitcoin could threaten UK stability, says bank. So who's right here? The Financial Times or the Guardian?
People write a lot of things about Bitcoin, predicting wild success and wild failure, and I think for the most part they're missing the point. Mm-hmm. That we've invented. It's been in the community, and Satoshi has invented a programmable money, which still we haven't even scratched the surface on what this thing can do.
Yeah.
So we're getting there.
So I was going to interview you, and normally, we kind of go through a formatted interview, but
we can do that too. I'm open to anything like that.
Sure. It's just I just see the money's been taken away from the institutions, from government, from banks. It's been given back to the people, effectively. Mm-hmm. That's what's happened here.
Well, the potential is there. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's happening, right? Yeah. I mean, it's really happening here. So.
Well, we still have to pay our taxes in whatever currency there is in the country we live in. Mm-hmm. I mean, you need dollars for that. So
yeah,
we're still bound to use the popular currency.
True.
So we're pretty far away from doing that. And that may never happen. I mean, I feel like we still have newspapers, and the internet has not killed off the newspaper.
But it has changed the newspaper, though.
They have become less important. And perhaps that's what will happen is government-backed fiat will become less of a necessity.
But even when you look at today's newspaper,
yeah,
it is a shadow of its former self, and that's because of the internet. Everything about the newspaper is different than, say, 30 years ago, right down to your daily ritual of waking up, putting on your bathrobe and going to your front doorstep, picking the thing up. It's all different, and that's all because of the internet. So it hasn't killed it, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. And
right. Yeah. But I mean, if you use that as the analogy, and I think where Bitcoin is headed is not, when you think of the internet, you don't think of, wow, internet really did away with newspapers and affected the recording industry. I think people think about and use every day things like Twitter and Facebook. These are things that did not exist before the internet. They did not replace anything to become Facebook and Twitter. And I think that's what's going to happen with Bitcoin. There are going to be things built on top of Bitcoin that do not exist today. Yeah. And that's what's going to be really exciting about Bitcoin.
Right.
There's going to be a Facebook of Bitcoin. There's going to be a Twitter of Bitcoin.
I'm just recording now because we're kind of brainstorming here. So right now we got news that PayPal is going to accept Bitcoin, which is pretty big news, isn't it?
Well, as each one of these companies that is threatened by Bitcoin accepts and adopts Bitcoin, they're basically proving the case that Bitcoin does some things better than they have been doing, and so that there's even use for these companies to take advantage of the Bitcoin protocol, and of course attract Bitcoin enthusiasts to their business. So there's that, but still, that's not the part of it that's going to be exciting about Bitcoin. And it's just the more people accept it, the less of a chicken and egg problem there is.
Right.
More people will use Bitcoin if there's more places to spend Bitcoin, and vice versa.
Right. So acceptance is really the key to expansion of Bitcoin. What do you see as the most exciting trend in Bitcoin and the most exciting possibility of Bitcoin?
Well, I think what's exciting now is the advent of Multisig. They're saying 2014 is going to be the year of Multisig. And what Multisig allows for with Bitcoin is you can have multiple parties control an amount of Bitcoin, such that if you have, say, the common example is a 2 of 3 multisig. So to spend any amount of Bitcoin, you need 2 out of 3 possible addresses. And those 3 addresses can be controlled by 3 different entities, such that no single entity can spend the Bitcoins that are protected by this 2 of 3 multisig. And you need at least 2. So like, no one could run off with it. And also no one person could negligently lose their private key and destroy all those Bitcoins, because there's still 2 other people that will have their private key and be able to move Bitcoins and that are protected by that 2 of 3.
Right. So that's like basically a check requiring 2 signatures effectively.
Exactly. But the signatures aren't, signatures you write out by hand. They're signatures protected by math and
easily forged. Right.
Yeah, it's impossible to forge these signatures. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, not impossible. It would just take you many eons, longer than the existence of the Earth to effectively get around the crypto security behind Bitcoin.
Right. And
so. Yeah, so with Multisig, there's a lot more you can do with that. And there's a lot of applications. For examples are escrow.
Right.
So you can have 2 parties enter into a transaction, say to buy a boat. You have 2 people dealing in a transaction where you buy a ride to the airport. Well, then you can just use the regular kind of transaction. But if you purchasing a boat, there's a lot of money involved and a large piece of property. So you're going to want to have some sort of escrow service to adjudicate in case of a dispute around purchasing this boat. So what you can use a 2 of 3 transaction where the 2 parties involved in the sale of the boat are 2 of the signatures. And the third one is somebody who could potentially adjudicate a dispute. And if at some point the boat is a lemon and there's a disagreement, you can have the third party pay them a certain amount to determine who gets the boat and the cash, and go ahead and enforce that on the blockchain without any legal involvement whatsoever. It can save a lot of lawyer expenses.
That is pretty exciting, because my main problem, they say you save a lot of transaction fees as opposed to using credit cards. You save chargebacks. But basically, if I'm buying a product from you, the merchant, once I send you those Bitcoins, that's it. I sent you the cash. It's like I just sent you a check.
Yeah.
And I'm relying upon you, the kindness of strangers, to send me to comply with our agreement. And yeah, most merchants out there, Overstock.com, if I'm not happy with it, I send it back. You give me a refund. But there's a zillion other merchants in the world I know nothing about. And how do I know you're going to comply?
Right. And that's what a 2 of 3 multi-sig escrow service can allow. You can basically enter into any kind of financial transaction with anyone in the world, even if you don't know them. You could have 3 people that don't know each other, one selling something, one buying something, and the other person available to adjudicate. And they can do business as if one of them is a merchant and is relying on their reputation to stay in business.
Right.
With 3 random people who don't even know each other, there is no issue of reputation. There is no issue of staying in business. So you don't have that to protect you in this transaction. But with Bitcoin, you have math, and you have the ability to have 2 out of 3 people decide that the other person was in the wrong and make things right.
Got it. And that is what Armory's coming out with, if I'm not mistaken, in late July of this year, right? Or
yeah, Armory's latest version has multi-sig allowed up to 7 of 7. So you could have a board of directors, 7 directors of a company, requiring 4 signatures for large expenditures. That's where we're at right now with Armory. Now, there's other services out there that implement multi-sig and do various things with them. It's at this moment, I'm only aware of Armory allows you to do your own services yourself with multi-sig. Somebody asked, what's the difference between Armory and one of these online services? And I'm like, well, you can use Armory to provide the online service that does these things.
Right.
Because Armory is a piece of software, and an online service is an online service. And if you go through an online service, you're still trusting a third party, and that sort of, to some extent, defeats one of the beautiful things about Bitcoin is that it's no longer necessary to trust a third party. You can do these things yourself.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And as an attorney here, we rely on escrow agents, which escrow means trust. And rely on these people to do a multitude of services for us, from real estate closings to, like you said, boats and planes, and a whole host of things. And it's done all the time in all different sorts of businesses. And what I see this doing for Bitcoin, what Bitcoin doing is allowing escrow for the common man at really low costs, low fees, and really giving you an added layer of protection that you would never be able to get in any other type of currency out there.
Right.
So how do you find your escrow agent?
I think in the future, there will be online forums where you can go and you can discuss with experts how to use Bitcoin to enforce a transaction or some financial contract. And on these same online forums, people can advertise themselves as escrow agents, and they can bid on your business and provide a price list for paying for their services. And you can find experts in particular things. If you were going to have an escrow service for the purchase of a boat, you would want somebody who has some experience in the boat business. So you might choose an escrow agent that has experience with that kind of business.
Yeah, probably these escrow agents will also get bonded to give you an added layer of security and protection. I've seen it. This happened in eBay. They were trying to do that for a while. I don't know how it worked out. Liberty Mutual, I think it was bonding a lot of these guys, stores and such, for a lot of money. So you knew that you were going to be protected. And in fact, that's what they do. A lot of courts and such, when they're appointing escrow agents for wills and estates, courts require you to go out and get a bond, get a surety, as they call it, from Old English.
So are you familiar with Uber?
Yeah, sure.
So that's the ride service that you can go online and find somebody. And rather than having these people that drive other folks around get a hack license or have some other authority say, yes, you can drive people around, it's crowdsourced. If the crowd does not like how you're driving people around and your service, then you're not going to last long at Uber. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like this bonded escrow agent. The necessity of somebody who's bonded is less important now, because you can crowdsource trust in an escrow agent, and if enough people use a particular entity off of a website, then there's some trust that's built up. Yeah. And and you're also getting somebody to do just that. And in the past, you would rely on some monolithic third party to provide the escrow, some bank or some legal firm, and you would have to go with the some business that has built up a lot of trust over time. And what Bitcoin will allow is to have trust built up in the same way you trust Yelp, and the same way you trust Uber. Mm-hmm. So these things are all going to be coming online with the next few years. And first the infrastructure, and then people are going to have to recognize the business model and get in on it. And then it's going to be people powered. These things are only going to work once a bunch of people get in on it and start using it.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Acceptance is really the key. I mean, It's just like I've got an app on my phone called Waze, and Waze, tells me the conditions on the highway, tells me if there's cops up there, tells me if there's an accident. Initially, nobody was using Waze, so it was of limited utility. Then all of a sudden, like you say, crowdsourcing, massive numbers of people said, hey, this is a great thing. Now there's hundreds of people around me at any moment using Waze, reporting highway conditions, and it's become immensely useful. And
now I'm going to start using it, because I'm hearing about it for the first time from you. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, WAZE, and for the iPhone or the Android. But the analogy is there.
Yeah,
more people accept it, more useful it becomes, and then more people start accepting it because it's so useful. And this thing's free. They got ads on it, but perfect example here. And I guess we're just going to see more and more of this, because I remember, God, when Bitcoin was $100, a friend of mine came to me and said, do you think I should get some of this? And I said, I don't know. It looks like I could have bought it when Trace Mayer told me to buy it at $7. I don't know. I think it might have run its course. And
there's video of Trace recommending it at 50 cents.
Yeah. And I said, I don't know. She said, well, I'm going to buy some. And then it went up to 1,200. So it shows what I know. But not so much as an investment or protection against doomed fiat currencies, which it could potentially have all of those properties. But, as for businesses, it just makes so much sense, cutting down on merchant fees. And now with this ability to escrow, it just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah. And that's why it's worth anything at all. I mean, the value of Bitcoin now and why it's worth anything is entirely based on the perception of people that see the potential. They see the potential for some killer app or apps to come along and make everyone want to use Bitcoin. And once everyone wants to use it, well, then the price will be naturally inflated, even from where it is now. But until that happens, it's pure speculation on. But when you see who's speculating and you see the brains behind it, and how the speculation is taking place, because it's not just people buying mining equipment. It's not just people buying Bitcoin. There is money out there that is desperately looking for the next big Bitcoin idea or business that they can invest in, and invest in some startup that is going to create the killer app. And these people are out there looking to spend their money, and they can't find anyone to spend it on.
Yeah,
there's precious few people that even know enough about Bitcoin to be able to make a decent business case. And so there's money out there waiting for that. Because before Bitcoin, the idea of going to college and studying cryptography was a very esoteric field.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, If I had a high schooler in my family that I could recommend, I was like, go to some technical school and learn everything you can about cryptography, because you'll be able to charge hundreds of dollars per hour for your knowledge. And that's where we're at right now. But people are still learning, and it's really it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time. So people see the potential. But there's still a long ways to go before that potential can be realized.
Hey, Blythe Masters, who is head of commodities trading at JP Morgan, and she's like the bogeyman of manipulation in commodities and currencies and all that. But we won't get into that. Her ex-husband has what's his name, Daniel Masters, has launched a Bitcoin hedge fund. And where is it located? In the island of Jersey, which is one of those tax shelter British Crown dependencies. It's a little island. There's a lot of internet gambling sites that are located there, the Isle of Man and Gibraltar, all over there. And he's set up a hedge fund, a regulated Bitcoin hedge fund. And, you got to believe there's a ton of money, and you got to believe, based on his connections and his exes, that there's going to be big bucks. He's co-principal of Global Advisors Jersey, which trades up to $2 billion of energy and equities. And, that means the big money is going into Bitcoin, right?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of big money looking to get into Bitcoin, and there's a lot more out there. It's trying to figure out how.
Exactly.
How we're going to get into this. How we're going to take advantage of this protocol.
Yep. We know it's coming.
Yeah, and that's why the price is where it is. And I don't see that changing.
So briefly, tell us about Bitcoin Armory, why it's not just another Bitcoin wallet, of which there's a number.
Yeah, well, if you really want to understand why Bitcoin Armory is special, you have to go back to the beginning. And it's a project by Alan Reiner that started a few years ago. And Alan Reiner just happens to be my half brother. I am 15 years older than him, and my mom, divorced and remarried, and then Alan came along, and so I've known him all his life, and a super smart guy, and just loves getting into stuff and digging into the math behind things. And he started telling me about Bitcoin early 2011, and it was a hobby for him. And he first got into mining because he thought that was interesting. And then once he got into the math behind it, he said, well, I can get into this, and started looking at the things people online were asking for on the forums for security features. And I know how to do all this stuff. And he's just started writing code and created Bitcoin Armory to collect what at the time were bounties on particular features that people were like, I need this to protect my Bitcoins. For instance, the paper backup, and then the fragmented paper backup, which he was the first to create that. Now, what a fragmented paper backup is, a cute little math trick called Shamir's secret sharing. And you can take a secret number, which Bitcoin is based on. You need to have your secret number to spend the Bitcoins that you own. But, you write that on a piece of paper, somebody finds it, they have your secret number, they have your Bitcoins.
Right.
Well, that's no good. He figured out a way to break that secret number into pieces. Now, this is going to sound like multisig, but it's actually completely different. You can take a secret number and turn it into, say, 3 numbers, such that if you have any 2 of those 3 numbers, you can recover your original secret number. So you print those 3 numbers on 3 pieces of paper, and you can keep 1 in a safe. You can keep 1 in your safety deposit box, and you give 1 to your mom. Now, even if your mom is a thief, she can't steal your Bitcoins. And even if, you die in an accident and nobody knows the combination to your safe, well, your mom should be able to get access to your safety deposit box and recover your Bitcoins. So even in the case of death, People talk about mnemonic devices to remember their private key or their password to where the private key is stored. Well, it doesn't help you if you're dead. But you do a fragmented paper backup and your Bitcoins are secure against so many eventualities. And so that was one of the earlier features that was added into Armory. And then he continued to pick up various bounties and add features and make the software more robust. One thing about Bitcoin Armory, which sometimes people complain about, is it requires you to have a complete copy of the blockchain. Blockchain is the public ledger of Bitcoin. So every transaction ever is on the blockchain. And when you run Bitcoin Armory, you have to have a copy of that entire blockchain on your computer. And then also Armory will put it into a database and make it more accessible to the program. So you're actually doubling the size you need. So it's not something you just put on your phone and walk around with. You have it on a pretty hefty computer and connect that computer to the internet, and then you download the blockchain, and you can keep all of your Bitcoins on a separate computer. So now I'm going into another aspect of this. One of the big things that Bitcoin Armory did was innovated with cold storage. So you've got your online computer that tracks the blockchain, keeps track of everything you own and what you can spend. But you can use a separate offline computer that's never touched the internet, run Armory on that as well. Now, that offline computer will not have a copy of the blockchain.
Right.
It does not need to be a big computer. You can get a $100 computer off of Overstock or Craigslist or wherever, and it can be older technology. And you just keep that off of the internet, and you can even run it off of a version of Linux that can sit on a USB key, and you can just plug it in and have your dumb old computer sign transactions. So you keep your private keys, your sensitive information off of the internet, and you simply use a USB key. Now, USB keys can be infected, so we recommend people use a USB key that is only used for this purpose and that you get from a reputable source. And then you just use it for signing, and you just have your offline computer near your online computer. Plug the USB key into the online computer to create a transaction, plug it into the offline computer to sign the transaction, and then plug it back into the online computer to broadcast it.
Right.
And that seems like a pain in the ass, but the same way you have a wallet in your back pocket, you can just do a transaction to put enough Bitcoin in an online wallet that you can spend easily, and then walk around and spend from your online wallet. So, your offline cold storage computer, that's like going to the ATM.
Right.
It takes an extra trip. You got to go do that. But then you've got walking around money for the next few days.
I see.
So that's in a nutshell what Armory does, and that's what people like about it. It's a little more involved than using just a wallet you download on an app on your Android. But, that's great for walking around money. Armory is what you use to have your savings. Your Bitcoin savings belongs in if you really want to sleep at night, you want that savings in an offline Armory wallet.
Yeah, because otherwise you're never really safe, are you?
Yeah, because, what's happened is all these hackers now have a financial incentive to attack people with Bitcoins.
Right.
And it's brilliant how some of these attacks have gone down and happened. They usually involve tricking people into sending Bitcoins to some address that they didn't realize they were sending it to an attacker. Right. A lot of times, that's how you hear about people losing a lot of Bitcoins. And because it's really hard to attack the protocol itself. That's super difficult. It's easier to trick people into sending you Bitcoins than it is to actually steal them.
So that's social engineering, right?
Yeah, a little bit. But one of the things around Multisig, which is great, is if you have your Bitcoins locked up with Multisig, say maybe you and your spouse, and you require 2 signatures on your savings, maybe 1 signature on your day-to-day funds. As long as you have 2 signatures on your savings, then you have to trick both partners into sending the wrong person to Bitcoin.
Interesting. Yeah. So there's a added check. So if you will, an added safety measure. So if one of you is a little senile, hopefully both of you won't be.
Well, and also if you have the fragmented backups on each of those partners' signatures, then even the senility will not cause your Bitcoins to be lost.
Yeah.
Because you can recover those fragments and piece together the wallet again. So
right. So I guess you really it's the belt and suspenders approach. But when you're dealing with internet security, a belt and suspenders is really what you need.
Yeah, and if you're going to stop relying on third parties, then basically you have to become the expert.
Yeah.
Do you trust you as your own banker? I mean, if you're not going to trust the banks as your own banker, then you have to have at least enough skill in using Bitcoin to provide yourself the security that you relied on your bank for.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't do that. They switch over to some other third party that for some reason they'd rather trust in their bank. And a lot of people lost money by trusting Mt. Gox instead of their bank, which looks foolish now. In fact, it looked foolish when it happened. I mean, a lot of people lost money at Mt. Gox earlier this year. And the part that I'm really confused about is how anyone trusted Mt. Gox after they very publicly lost thousands upon thousands of dollars in 2011.
Yeah. And that was another thing that really convinced me that Bitcoin was here to stay, and is that even after the Mt. Gox debacle and having a couple of other exchanges go under, Bitcoin still was thriving. There was no mass loss of faith, and the innovation continued, and adoption continued unabated, and more merchants continued to sign up for it.
Right. It's only in the popular media that entities like Mt. Gox or Silk Road or any of the other underworld or shady operations, it's only in the popular media that these things get equated with Bitcoin. And the reality is they are early adopters of Bitcoin and bad actors. They're either incompetent or dishonest, and they've come along early and discovered ways to either rob people or be incompetent with Bitcoin, and then they get a lot of publicity because bad people and incompetent people are funny to read about. I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting fodder for the news. And the reality of Bitcoin is that it's a platform, it's an invention, and a lot more, much more reputable, much more talented people have still to come to the game.
Yep. And like you said, we're waiting for that killer app, and I think every day we get closer to it. So, hey, people want to find out more about you, Andy, more about Bitcoin Armory. What's the best place to go to?
Well, they can come to our website, bitcoinarmory.com. Okay. And you can pretty much find out everything you want to know about Bitcoin Armory on that website.
Excellent. Well, bitcoinarmory.com, place to go to. And Andy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It was great talking to you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.